session 5 of I'm a Citizen of. Mark chapter 3, the teachers of the law were accusing Jesus of being an agent of Satan, and that was how he was casting spirits out of people. And Jesus pointed out how ridiculous that was, because in that case, the kingdom of evil would be divided against itself. Then in verse 27 he says this, "No one can enter a strong man's house without first tying him up. Then he can plunder the strong man's house." In other words, what Jesus was saying was that Satan has power, he's the strong man, but the ones he possessed actually belong to God. And so what Jesus was doing was simply taking back God's possessions. Now, in the work of Paul spreading the news of Jesus, he had to face the reality of a kingdom of darkness, a kingdom that was behind the earthly kingdoms. And this is seen at Philippi, where he came across a slave girl, and it said she had a spirit by which she predicted the future. Now, the Greek word used there for the spirit calls it a python, or a Pythia spirit. Pythia was the name of the woman at Delphi who would pronounce oracles. So people would come, they wanted guidance, they'd come to the oracle at Delphi, to the temple of Apollo, and they would ask the oracle. And it said that this woman would get the answers from Apollo himself. And this girl's said to have the same spirit. We think she was quite young, not sure how old, but just a young girl. And she was a slave. And she used to give oracles to people who would pay her owners large sums of money. She was a slave, but not just to her earthly owners. She was also a slave to the spirit that was working within her. Although she was speaking good words about Paul and Silas, Paul realised that this was a spirit that wasn't of God. It was a bad thing. And so he told it to leave, and it did. So what Paul was doing there was just what Jesus had said. He was plundering the strong man's house. How this girl came to have the spirit is most likely because she was dedicated to the god Apollo. Now, in our Western world, we probably think that's superstitious sort of stuff, but over the years, John and I have ministered to enough people from other cultures who have been dedicated to other gods, and it has badly affected their lives, and they need to be set free from that. Jesus has defeated the powers of evil. Colossians 2:15, talking about Jesus' death, says this, "And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross." And so spreading the good news of Jesus does mean coming up against forces of evil. But they are forces that have been defeated, and we have the authority of Jesus to send them packing. And so our mission to the world is not just in words, it's also in power. And so it leaves the question, who do we really serve? Who is our master in reality? Romans 6:22 says, "You have been set free and become slaves of God." At Delphi in Greece, there is a wall with a whole lot of inscriptions by slaves who've been set free. And the idea was the slave could save up money, take it to the priests at Delphi, and the priests would check everything out, and if all was okay, they would then hand the money over to the slave's owner, and the slave was then free. But they then belonged to Apollo, the god Apollo. And I think that's the picture here that Paul's using. We've been bought at a price. We are free, but we are now slaves of the one who's bought us, God. We may not like the name slave, it's not a very good connotation, but it indicates to whom we belong, and it indicates that our aim should be to carry out his will and not our own.
God is able, he will never fail. He is Almighty God, greater than all we